All right, just wanted to do a little book review discussion. Recently finished The History of Western Philosophy by Bertrand Russell. I wasn't too familiar with Bertrand Russell before I read this. I knew that he was a philosopher. I had heard some quotes of his. I think he's famously an atheist of the 20th century. And I knew that he had done some work on logic, mathematics. Yeah, not too much that I knew about him. And so I've always been interested in philosophy. I've read other I've read many books of like introduction to philosophy, overviews of philosophy, histories of philosophy of different eras. I've tended to enjoy them more than reading firsthand sources. I need to read more firsthand sources of my favorite philosophers, but I tend to like more modern overviews of these works or critical analysis of them. I find them easier to digest. Oftentimes, some philosophers are just really, really difficult to understand. For example, Hegel or Kant, particularly Hegel, though. A lot of the Germans, but just many philosophers in general are really difficult to understand. And so Bertrand Russell largely comes off as very understandable and comprehensive. And comprehensive is a good word. He discusses all these philosophers, I would say, with a minimum of 5 pages. Some of these guys get far more. You can see on the side some of the philosophers that are discussed in this book, and it goes all the way from the Pre-Socratics up to kind of his own school of philosophy. And it's very interesting. This book covers obviously the history of philosophy, but also history and politics. And this book was written in 1943. So there's a lot of references to Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, and of course World War II is ongoing. And he discusses how certain branches of philosophy have influenced many people and have culminated sort of in the modern day Nazi Germany, and then other schools have basically become what is in Soviet Russia, or whatever, the Soviet Union. And also another school that is more similar to the Soviet Union, though quite different. In that school, it would be the modern day America or England. So kind of 2 main branches, and then one of the main branches has 2 more branches, but there's branches everywhere. So let's see. I found it very helpful to. This is probably the best book that I've read on the history of philosophy. Just going through all the ideas, how each philosopher has influenced another, what the ideas actually are, and I think the reason for that is because Bertrand Russell himself is a philosopher. So he's very critical about every philosopher in this book. He first lays out as unbiased as he can what their ideas and arguments are, and then in the end of each chapter he critiques them. And in some of them, it's quite surprising to me how flawed a lot of these philosophies are. They're so what's the word? They're so built up and so elaborate and complex, but the foundation is often not there. It can't be walked on. Ultimately, a lot of it comes down to linguistical errors and just assumptions that everything is built on top of, and when you attack those original assumptions, the whole thing falls apart. And unfortunately, for some great philosophers, it appears, if Bertrand Russell is right, that a lot, although they're brilliant minds, all of their work is just, I don't want to say false or incorrect, but as sad as it is to say, like, particularly what stands off of my head would be Bergson, Henri Bergson, French, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, and Hegel, I think Spinoza. Let me go into the table of contents here. So yeah, he kind of starts with the Pre-Socratics and gives them a lot more credit than I thought he would. I think he credits them with a lot of creativity, which after Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle has been kind of squashed out. And then he goes through all, the, what would you call them? Religious thinkers, basically from, so after the main three Greek philosophers, there's the big schools, the Epicureans, the Stoics. None of this is surprising. This is what you'll find in a history of philosophy, Western philosophy book, I should say. Yeah, he goes through the Dark Ages, early Christianity, all that. I found that part to be quite dense and quite not as enjoyable, to be frank. Just kind of wanted to get through that. Thomas Aquinas was kind of interesting. I found Plotinus quite interesting. Don't believe he was Christian, but he was kind of a Neoplatonist, Platonic thinker. In fact, maybe he was Christian. Anyway, obviously he goes up to the Renaissance, Machiavelli, the Reformation, and then we really start to get into the big thinkers, in my opinion, kind of from Hobbes onward, Descartes, Spinoza, Leibniz. I really enjoyed the part where he kind of discusses like large movements. For example, philosophical liberalism is a chapter. The Romantic movement has its own chapter. Currents of thought in the 19th century. I really enjoyed those parts. There's even a chapter on Byron, which I really enjoyed. Nietzsche, the utilitarians, Karl Marx, Schopenhauer. But yeah, it was really helpful overall just to get the perspective of a philosopher to critique some of these ideas, because in some of these other works I've read, the ideas are just kind of stated, and each thinker is kind of presented to be correct in their own way, and then it just leaves you with the choice: which did I find most appealing or most convincing? And then I will just go research that philosopher more. I've always been kind of a fan of Epicurus, not so much after reading this book. It definitely didn't kill my interest in Epicurus, but I just like the fact that he did not shy away from crediting ideas he thought credible and discrediting ideas he thought discreditable. Like I said, some history of philosophies is just, the ideas are just presented and not critiques. And so I did like this about this book quite a bit. And I think I'm going to be reading more Bertrand Russell after this. I'd like to know, because he seems like a smart guy, and I just like the way that he can, I shouldn't say dumb them down, but make the ideas quite digestible. I mean, for example, and particularly Hegel, I mean, Bergson, a lot of these thinkers are just impenetrable to, I would say, the average person who just doesn't have like a whole lot of time to spend on digesting every single major thinker. You kind of have to narrow it down. Life is only so long. I'm absolutely going to go back to this at some point. I don't know if I'll read it from cover to cover again, although I very well may, more than once. But what I might find myself doing is just referring to whatever chapter whatever thinker I want to go back to for whatever reason. So if I want to catch up on Nietzsche, instead of reading Nietzsche, although I might do that as well, I might just read the chapter that Bertrand Russell wrote on Nietzsche just to kind of get a refresher, or Schopenhauer, Rousseau, whoever. I really enjoyed the parts on Rousseau, actually. It's very fascinating on how influential his whole movement was, you know, how he influenced Byron and Nietzsche and all these thinkers that kind of got away from rationalism. The whole Romantic movement I thought was very fascinating. I can't speak English. And just how it has influenced us up to the modern day. Looks like Mohammedan, God, I cannot speak, culture is even a chapter, which is really cool. How would you pronounce that? Mohammedan culture. Definitely is not how you would say it now. It would be Islamic culture, but that has its own chapters, which is really cool. So yeah, would highly recommend anybody who's interested in philosophy, the history of philosophy, just kind of getting a refresher on all these. I would even recommend it to someone who doesn't know anything about philosophy, or somebody who has quite a good understanding on a lot of philosophers. It's highly recommended for me. So that's all.